Hi everyone, welcome to All Things Iceland, the place to get the inside scoop on Icelandic nature, history, culture, and language. My name is Jules and I am out in the elements again in Iceland, specifically in my town that I live in called Mosfellsbær. And it's a little bit of a rainy day, but also I have the especially gorgeous Esja behind me. This mountain is amazing, and as you can see, it also has some snow on top of it. I feel like the snow followed me from the West Fjords to Reykjavik, but such is life. Winter is coming, as you know. And in this video, as the title says, I'm going to be talking about how to offend Icelandic people. Now, before anybody kind of jumps into it, the comments, the idea behind this video is not to say or to encourage people to offend Icelandic people. Obviously not. I would never want to do that. Rather, it's more of like a lighthearted video because Icelandic people on average are really laid back, and there are very few things that potentially might make them annoyed. So I figured, why not make a video to give you some info about some particular things that might rub them the wrong way that you can avoid if you end up meeting or interacting with an Icelandic person. I have so many different really fun videos coming out, so definitely make sure that you're subscribed and you hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on those awesome videos. Before I jump into the video though, I do want to say that a lot of people commented on my lopapeysa that I wore in a couple of videos back, and so I decided to wear another one just to show you a different variety of colors and patterns. This one's more Christmassy, of course, but I love it. It's so cute. And if you are interested in hearing content about lopapeysas, which are the traditional Icelandic sweaters, definitely let me know in the comments and I can make some content specifically about this topic. Also, it's a little windy, so I might end up tearing up during this video just because my eyes are a bit sensitive. And here comes the sun, which is great. And of course, it doesn't mean that every Icelander will be offended by this thing, but there's a good chance that a decent amount of Icelanders will have some feelings of annoyance about the things that I am going to point out or be offended, whichever word you want to use. The first offensive thing, which they're not in order of most offensive, is going into an Icelandic person's house without first taking off your shoes. Icelandic weather is really variable. It can be quite wet, so rainy, snowy, sleet, all of those things. And so your shoes get really dirty. And in order to keep the house cleaner longer, Icelandic people like to take their shoes off, and they expect that of their guests as well. I have been in situations, not for myself, because I'm totally fine with that, and I did that when I lived back in New York, but I have been in situations where I've witnessed other people just like walking through people's houses here with their shoes on, and someone had to be like, hey, excuse me, could you please take your shoes off? And the person's like, oh, they didn't even think about it, you know? So if you're one of those people who's not used to taking your shoes off when going into the house, that will definitely be a change for you going to an Icelandic person's house or living in Iceland. And if you go to like an apartment building, sometimes you might even see people's shoes outside of the doors lined up or in containers for shoes, because it is something that people take quite seriously here. And it's essentially a cultural habit. So just FYI, if you don't want to have an Icelander being annoyed at you for dirtying their house, make sure you take off your shoes when you visit them. Number two is calling an Icelandic horse a pony. And while the Icelandic horse is super adorable, really mild-mannered, and also short in stature, they are not ponies. I've witnessed situations in which an Icelandic horse was called a pony, and Icelander was like, no, it's not a pony, it's a horse. And they like got a little bit defensive. I'm not saying that, like I mentioned, everybody would get in that same way, but still, I think even the horses might get a little bit offended, to be honest, because they know they're horses, okay? And they're also super strong. I mean, these horses endure a lot throughout the year. They're very sturdy, and they're unique in that they have been bred in isolation for over 1,000 years. So give them their respect and please call them a horse, not a pony. Number three is one that I personally did, obviously not on purpose, but still it happened. And it has to do with not offering coffee to Icelanders when they've come over for like a get together. neither Gunnar or I drink coffee, which is really shocking to a lot of Icelanders and some foreigners too, just because there could be really long, dark nights here and it could be really hard to kind of get up and get going. But both of us are just, I don't know, we're fine with water. And the story behind this though is really funny because we had family members over. I don't particularly remember the occasion, meaning like if it was a birthday or something else, but we did have people over, and it was just one of those instances that after we had dinner, people were like, okay, so let's have some coffee. And I was like, we don't drink coffee. And they're like, okay, but we drink coffee, so do you have coffee for us? And it's like, no. And the look on people's faces was like, you invite us over and you don't have any coffee? And I was like, sorry, I don't know what to say. And so the next time we invited people over, no joke, 2 different people showed up with coffee presses. So they bought us coffee presses and coffee grinds in order for us to make them coffee for after dinner or after whatever food we were eating. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is serious. We have to have coffee. I just think that was really funny for my Icelandic family who were kind of annoyed, slightly offended that we didn't have coffee available for the adults. As I mentioned in previous videos, Icelanders love their licorice. And I think this is mostly a Nordic thing, as I've gotten comments from many different people from other countries. And I remember the first time I tried really intense licorice. So sometimes it's salty, sometimes it's peppery. And it was too much for my palate. And there's many people that I know who've also tried it, it's too much for their palate. And I ended up saying in front of Gunnar and some of his friends that it was gross. And they looked at me like, what? How could you say that, right? And they were laughing, but they're still inside was kind of like, you just don't have good taste type of thing. And I was like, whoa, I honestly didn't think that there was so much love for this type of licorice that I thought it was okay because it was so intense for my palate to say like, this is not good. And they were like, girl. So, all right, they didn't say that, but still they were just like, don't come for our licorice like that. So if you do decide to try it, obviously it's at your own risk. But if you harp on about how you think it's gross or that they don't have good taste or something, obviously that will be offensive to them. I do think you have to have a special palate or have been indoctrinated as a child, whichever, but it is quite an experience, if nothing else. So just fair warning. The last but certainly not least thing that can offend an Icelander, and more than likely will, maybe more than all the other things that I talked about on this list, is being a disrespectful tourist. And there have been many tourists who have been disrespectful in this country because there's been millions of people who have visited here. And some of those people, like the most disrespectful, have ended up making the news here. And you have Icelanders getting really upset about the fact that people aren't being respectful of the nature. They're not understanding the rules when it comes around like where you can use the bathroom. In one of my previous videos called 18 Things That You Should Never Do or Should Not Do in Iceland, which will be in the description box if you haven't seen it already, I go full in depth to things that are just inappropriate and are taken from examples of people who have done them in Iceland as tourists. And so it's to the point where, of course, now we're in a situation where we don't really have tourists. So there's a break from people who are just being completely irresponsible and disrespectful. And of course, at the same time, Icelanders want to welcome people to the country to enjoy the nature. And also it's part of the business here, right? So I encourage you to not be one of those people who makes the news and has a ton of Icelandic people annoyed and offended that you decide to take a poop somewhere out in nature, or maybe on someone's farm, decide to take a shower in the area of the gas station where people wash their cars. Like I'm talking about like really stupid, disrespectful things. Don't be that person. It's pretty simple, I feel, to enjoy Icelandic nature and still be respectful. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone that you think would find it interesting or helpful. If you enjoy exclusive content about Iceland, over on the All Things Iceland community on Patreon, I'm putting up content there. Like every month I'm doing Ask Me Anythings, I'm doing live chat groups, I have Folklore Friday, and so much more. And also, as a member there, you're helping to support the evolution of all things Iceland, which is this YouTube channel and podcast, in which I'm doing some awesome interviews over on the podcast with amazing Icelanders and expats in the country. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.